Hello, and welcome to Off the Grid, a podcast about leaving social media without losing all your clients. I'm Amelia. I am a writer, speaker, and the founder of Softer Sounds, a feminist podcast studio for entrepreneurs and creatives. I am also, as you might have guessed, the host of this podcast. And I am so glad you're tuned into this episode. Today, we are kicking off part 3 of season 1 of Off the Grid. I did not expect season 1 to have 3 whole parts, but once we got rolling, I just heard from so many amazing listeners and friends and collaborators of mine who wanted to talk more about these topics around leaving social media. So today I will be joined by a dear internet friend and wonderful guest, Elle Johnston of Another Practice. Before we dive into that conversation, I do have 2 quick reminders for you, as always. Reminder number 1 is don't forget to download the free Leaving Social Media Toolkit. This is our totally free resource for leaving social media and creating your fun, feel-good, algorithm-free marketing plan. The toolkit has 3 of my favorite marketing tools of all time inside, including the much coveted list of 100 ways to share your work off social media. You can get it at softersounds.studio/buyig. All you have to do is drop your email there and it'll land in your inbox automatically. So again, that's softersounds.studio/buyig for the free Leaving Social Media Toolkit. Announcement number 2 is a reminder that the refresh is coming up in August. I just announced this in our last episode before the break. So if you want to head back to learn about how to plan a summer sabbatical and get all the details on the refresh, I highly suggest that. But just to give you the quick hits here, the refresh is a 3-workshop series hosted by yours truly, where we will reset your relationship with social media and envision an algorithm-free future for your business. So over the course of these 3 workshops in August, we are going to clear the fear of doing business differently, weave the web of your channels, community, and collaborators, and make the map of your business offerings and marketing efforts for fall. I'm thinking of it as an opportunity to take the month of August off from making content and doing anything like hardcore business planning and just join a really lovely group of people who want some soft support, envisioning a more fulfilling, feel good, fun, algorithm free, all of my alliteration there, future for their business. So if you like this podcast, you're going to love the refresh. And the very best news yet is that it's only $99 to join us. So that's less than $100 to join live for these 3 workshops. And everyone who signs up also gets access to the recordings and some special goodies that I'm creating just for refreshers. I'm thinking of the goodies as the refreshments because I love a good pun. So you can head to the show notes for the link or go to softersounds.studio/refresh to learn more and sign up. Okay, those are all the announcements for today. So let's get into the episode. Oh no. Oh, I can't hear you. Oh, you're still muted. That's why.
Big internet freak out. Don't know what's going on.
It's okay. Technical difficulties happen.
Yeah, right?
No worries. I was just about to introduce you. So we're all
Perfect
good and
timing.
we'll figure it out. The recording will be easy to edit that out. So let's dive into today's interview. Today, I'm here with Elle Johnston. She's an embodiment teacher, writer, and podcaster who helps folks get comfortable in their own skin. And spoiler alert, Elle left social media in November of
Indeed, I
2021.
did.
So I know, big news. I'm going to share that spoiler up
Shocker.
front. Throughout the first season of the podcast, I've been hearing from listeners who basically reach out to me and say, Amelia, I love all your tools that you're sharing. It's so cool to hear your story, but like, how did it actually feel to leave social media? Like, tell me about how your nervous system did. Tell me about how your body did. So today, we're going to channel all of our water placements in our chart and have a really feelings soaked conversation about how it feels to leave social and how it impacts your business and all of the good that comes up when you chart a different path for yourself. So, hi, Elle. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so pumped to have you here. So, let's dive right into the story. Tell me, well, maybe let's start. Where do I want to start? Tell me a little bit about yourself and then tell me your social media story. Like, who are you and how did you get online?
Sure, just I'll go back to like the 90s, like sort of
Casual.
casual like flashback filter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, as you said, I am an embodiment teacher, which for those of you who aren't particularly sure what that means, it means that I work with a lot with like breath and rest, and practices, sort of somatic practices that help people get in tune with like what it actually feels like to live in their bodies, because
Mm,
certainly before I started doing this I was mostly just a floating head, where I was
yeah.
like, okay, I guess I'll eat at 12 o'clock because that's when lunch is, and just I guess I'll wear a dress because then it's meant to be hot, I don't know, whatever, but like, no concept of like what it actually felt to be in
Mm-hmm.
my body. So that's kind of the work that I do. And I mean, in terms of social media, being on the internet, I am a child of the 90s. So I have
Mm-hmm.
been there since Internet 1.0,
Yeah.
the sort of the amazing like GeoCities sites with like rotating GIFs and like flashing letters and music that turned
Yes.
on the second you opened the page.
100%.
Very fond memories of like the dancing baby.
Yeah.
Um,
I built so many GeoCities and Angel Fire sites just like for like my favorite bands with clip
oh,
art. Like,
yes, amazing,
yes.
amazing. So yeah, I mean, I've been like rolling around the internet since then. But I was never like a really big social media. I never really used it for massively sort of social purposes beyond like
Mm-hmm.
chatting with people I already knew.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't live journal. I didn't kind of like do that like early blogging thing of saying everything you thought on a page on the internet.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I really remember kind of like getting into Instagram when it first, probably within like the first year or two of it coming
Mm-hmm.
out.
Yeah.
It was a platform that was really well matched to my skill sets and my
Yeah.
interests. Like, I was at the time studying fashion and very aesthetically minded, and I loved photography, and I loved kind of writing and you know telling stories and stuff like that. So it was like, oh, cool, all of these things I can use. This feels much more interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for a really long time, it was just a place that I put pictures of what I was eating and stuff I saw on the street, and like, pictures of
Mm-hmm.
me and my friends, and like life documentation kind of stuff. And then somewhere along the way, within the nearly decade of me using Instagram, which is kind of freaky to
Wild.
think about,
Right? Yeah.
like, ugh, so many hours of my life. But somewhere along the way, I kind of became a small business owner, and within that, suddenly Instagram was a tool that could be used. Very vague tracking of my very strange career history, but like at the time, my first business was a bakery, and
Oh,
so again, Instagram is,
yeah.
I know,
I didn't know that.
fashion, pastry school, or not pastry chefing, and then embodiment. This is my pathway.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so again, very very Instagram
Mhm.
friendly,
Yeah.
and it was a fantastic way to build a community, to tell people where I was going to be, because I was like selling in markets, and so I'd be like, this is where I am today, blah blah blah, just like generate interest and conversation about what I was making.
Hmm.
Um, and even that was pretty fun. And then yeah, sort of as you move further in, like I think the platform itself morphed and changed so much over that decade, from
Hmm.
like an app to share photos with your friends into this
Hmm.
massive money generating machine that it is now. And yeah, like as I morphed from being a pastry chef into being a yoga teacher and an embodiment teacher, and I think especially as we moved into the pandemic and we all
Hmm.
had to be working online a lot, especially if we're in, if you're in, used to be teaching in studios and chatting with people after class, and suddenly you're like, okay, I guess I've just got to figure out how to do this via the internet instead.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then Instagram kind of became a really big linchpin in my own marketing attempts and business building and business planning, until it didn't.
Yeah, yeah. So let's dive into kind of those sticky months last fall, even last summer, I think, where you're like grappling with
Mm.
how Instagram's making you feel, starting to consider that you might not want to be on the platform anymore. Can you tell me, like, I guess what I want to know is like how did Instagram being on Instagram feel in your body? And how did that make you realize you needed to leave?
Mm. I think, I think that I'd known that I needed to leave for way longer.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it was kind of started as noticing that kind of like hollow hunger of like the continual scroll, like where you're just like seeking and seeking and seeking for something that you can never find, because it's not actually a thing. You're just seeking the dopamine hit, and kind
Yeah.
of starting to recognize that like it's quite a grimy feeling to me. Like
Hmm.
you're just like,
Yeah.
oh god, like clawing for nothingness.
Yeah.
um so yeah, starting to kind of like pick up on like every time I spent too long on the app, I kind of come away with this like, ugh, what was that, like what is this? And then yeah, from there it kind of spiraled in or expanded into all of the other parts of it, like kind of noticing the way that I would pretty much hold my breath the whole time I was
Mm.
on Instagram, just like these little short, shallow breaths, like
Yeah.
noticing a kind of like rush of what I recognize now as like activation of like nervous system activation,
Mm.
which is kind of like your body slipping into like fight or flight. Um, and just sort of I'm sat here on the couch. There's no tigers. There's nothing attacking me. There is nothing happening. But I'm
Yeah.
like my body is like ready to react to something and kind of like
Yeah.
bracing.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it just kind of like it wasn't. It very rarely is a very like linear story,
Of
but
course.
just these kind of like little like points of like, oh yeah, that's happening, and oh yeah, that's the sort of the result of me opening this
Hmm.
up. And then from like also a presence and awareness perspective as well, just like noticing how mindless it had become, where I'd just like pick
Mm-hmm.
my phone up to check the weather and I'd be like, okay, cool. No, no, this is not where I meant to be. What is happening? I've been here 20 minutes already.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if I knew, I remember all of these feelings you're talking about, like the clawing, the dopamine seeking, the for me it would just be like my whole body would just be very like tingly, but not in the good way, in the like jittery, like I've had too much coffee way of, and
Yeah,
like just
like your
as I would
skin's a little bit too
scroll.
tight.
Yes, exactly. And I would remember feeling that when I'd be scrolling on the platform, or for me, it often manifested in this like obsessive content creation, or just like, I think I shared on a previous episode, like I would spend so much time planning my feed. Like I did that almost just as much as I was scrolling, moving the little squares
Oh
around
yeah.
in my planning app. I would sit on the couch in the evenings with my partner for hours thinking
Mm.
about that. And like I don't want to dismiss anyone who's doing that, or if that is your experience, I feel you, I have been there. But I think that something that like kind of happened for me as well is in my human design, I'm a generator with a sacral authority. And so I do tend to get pretty strong gut like uh responses to things. And I could feel my gut start saying no. Like I could feel I would like get on Instagram, my body would like move back from my phone. Like I could feel my body start to recoil. And as you said at the very beginning, like you knew you needed to leave a long time before you actually did. Eventually I realized like my body knew I needed to leave well before I actually like made a decision to leave, because I would just override all those
Mm-hmm.
feelings. I would constantly be like, even if I noticed them, it took me a long time to notice them. And even then when I did, I would just tell myself, whatever. Like I would just talk it
But you have
down.
to be on Instagram to be a business, like, to have a successful business. You're like,
Yeah.
it's like,
All these
okay, but we
narratives.
can make this work for us. And like, okay, like,
Yeah.
the kind of like bargaining that happens.
Yes, exactly. Right. It'd just be like, there's like just like voices in my head talking and speaking over all of my body's voice, and or my body's voice or my body's signals or those feelings in this instance. Could you maybe give us a little primer and talk a little bit more about the nervous system regulation and dysregulation that you mentioned? That might be
Yeah,
totally new to some people. So maybe you can kind of just
yeah.
tell us what it
I love
means and talk more.
a nervous system 101.
Me too.
I'm like, even, every time I hear someone else do it, I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a nervous system. It is what innervates all of our body.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a branch of it that is called the autonomic nervous system. So we have things like, being able to control our muscles and being able to, things that we can purposefully choose to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then the autonomic nervous system is the stuff that we don't do consciously. So it's
Mm-hmm.
the stuff like digesting your food and breathing and your heart
Mm-hmm.
beating and all of the stuff that you actually don't want to have to purposefully do all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then within the autonomic nervous system, you have two kind of sides of it. You have the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So, sympathetic nervous system, somewhat counterintuitively, is the fight and flight kind of reaction. It is like activation to move through the world. We need this to wake us up in the morning, to run away from tigers, to
Yeah.
like to do all of the things that we need to do. And we also have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is what is known as like the rest and digest. So,
Mm-hmm.
we also need that to be able to sleep,
Yes.
digest our food, like,
Mm-hmm.
relax. And kind of a lot of the work I do is helping people kind of like pass out what that actually feels like in your body, because
Mm-hmm.
we can cognitively understand it. You can go on Wikipedia and read like reams of of information about like what your nervous system does,
Mm-hmm.
but what does that actually feel like in your body?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I mean, it's just as a curiosity to you, you dear listener. You might just notice like next time you get a startle, or you get a fright or something like that, or even just you go for a run, something that you are obviously activating your nervous system, you might just take a pause and kind of like notice the subtle sensations, like what is happening. Do you feel any tingles? Do you feel anything in particular in like your gut or in your sort of anywhere else in your body? And then vice versa for when you're feeling really restful and like relaxed, like what does that actually feel like in your body? And so yeah, like when we talk about nervous system regulation, it isn't necessarily that, well, it definitely isn't that you only want to be calm and still.
Yeah.
It's that you want to be able to have the fluidity and the capacity to kind of like move back and forth between these states as you need to, as serves you to live well in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what we often find in the world as it is that there is a lot of opportunity for activation,
Mm-hmm.
and there is less opportunity for down regulation. So
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of things that can switch you on,
Mm-hmm.
and not so much. You have to be quite intentional about like pulling back and switching off and like
Mm-hmm.
slowing down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you, and now with this like new framework in mind, how did you start to think about social media, and then let's talk about maybe less like being on, but when you actually left, like what changed in your body and in your embodied experience?
Mm. So, I mean, I would love to imagine that I was, the kind of person who was like, okay, I figured it out. Look, I figured out that this is not good for me, and I'm going to do the thing that is best for me every time. No, no.
Not at all.
Unfortunately, I am still a human, and I have plenty of human foibles. But there is a point that I find in my own experience where like the signs get so loud that I'm like, okay, I have to actually pay attention to these.
Mm-hmm.
And unlike your beautifully like measured leaving social media plan, which I've now listened to in like retrospect and be like, oh yeah, I was just like, I can't, I'm out, I'm done. Like delete the app, I'm gone.
And that is, I want to say, what most people do. And most of us are not like Capricorn risings like myself who like need a plan. So
I'm Aries rising, so that's it's
you're
very
like out.
no. Burn it down, I'm done.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was November last year, and I was like, cool. I had done this like really kind of beautiful collaboration with a friend, but the launch itself felt quite urgent in my system. I kind of
Mm-hmm.
got to the end of it and I was like, I can't just like, after 2 years of like putting out into the world, putting out into the world, this sort of the
Yeah.
urgent churn that online business can often require, and that definitely
Mm-hmm.
like when you're led by Instagram kind of just gets habitual. I was like, I have to, like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, like deleted the app and had probably about, I want to say like a week or two of kind of like a weird hangover, like having a phantom limb.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um,
A
just
phantom scroll. You just find
yeah,
yourself
just be
like
like,
touching the wall, scrolling.
it was more that I'd be like in a circumstance and I was like, oh, I should write about this. I should write a caption about this.
Oh,
Or like, oh, I should like document this. And I'd be like, actually, I could just be here in this instead of having to like
yes.
mine my life for content.
Yes. A really good question I got for a Q&A episode that we're already answering is like, how long does it take to stop turning your life into content when you get off social media? I had that same experience. I just was every moment like, since I left, I don't take pictures of what I eat anymore or what books I'm reading or like
Yeah.
what I'm doing at all. But anyway, continue. So you had this experience of just noticing that you're the phantom limb of
Yeah.
Instagram because it had been
Yeah.
so much a part of your experience that it was just still there. Your body still felt it, even if you weren't on the app. Wow.
Also the kind of like pull to it became really apparent how much I was using it for like distracting myself from discomfort
Mm-hmm.
of all sorts, like of being lightly bored, all the way to like being upset, or
Yeah.
having to like work through difficult feelings or thoughts, and just being like, I'm just gonna move away from
Yeah.
this. And so,
Yeah.
and that's work that is, from a physical perspective, from an embodied perspective, is very much part of my practice, is
Mm-hmm.
like learning to be with discomfort, learning to be in discomfort.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like the first couple of weeks were just like this real noticing of like, oh wow, I've been using this to escape a bunch of stuff. Not all bad or anything, but just like, we're just 2 years of pandemic. It was just like, I haven't got the capacity to deal with any of this.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like after the first couple of weeks, it just became so much more peaceful. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was like so spacious to
Mm-hmm.
not be there anymore, to just like to not be mining my life for content, to not be like
Mm-hmm.
kind of to create when I wanted to create, rather
Mm-hmm.
than that like sense of like, oh, I have to do this for the overlord of the algorithm.
Yeah.
um
Because
yeah,
I'll
and
be
so
punished if I don't, like, to not create out of fear. I feel like that's such
yeah.
what so many of us on social media are doing, is just
Mm.
creating out of fear or feeling like we're being punished.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, like what a horrible thing to do to our relationship with our creativity.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, it felt, God, it was, yeah, to actually leave was big and scary, and confronting at some points. But also, yeah, like I kept talking to friends who are also small business owners, and just like, you're off Instagram. Oh wow, I'm really jealous. I want to, but I don't know. Like I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm too scared to, or like I don't know how I'll run my business without it or anything. And I was just like, oh, it's so quiet out here. Like that sense of having 1,000 other people's thoughts and opinions in your brain is just gone, and it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I had a very similar experience when I first left. I had that phantom limb is such a perfect way to describe that. Beautiful choice of words there. Like I was just reaching for like the that clawing towards something, the reaching for the dopamine. I was still doing that,
Mm,
but it's just the app wasn't on my phone. So I really had to be like I was just became even more aware of that I was doing that. And then I went through this phase of like intense content creation because I had been making so much content for Instagram. I was like, and I like sent all these long email newsletters and I wrote all these blog posts that first like summer I left. And then I think I like my nervous system slowed down, down regulated finally. It took me like a
yeah.
couple of months, probably like for me as what I would guess. I left in April, like 4 months, probably until like the end of August, September, to really like actually feel into the piece of it and not be panicking, not feel scared, not the phantom limb has totally gone away at this point. I'm over a year in. And I was surprised at how long it took. And I think that many people, a cycle that I see is people leaving in the way that you mentioned of like so much overwhelm, can't do it, got to get off,
Hmm.
and then getting to the other side of that and then like fear and panic and you peace, like what you just said is so beautiful, like it's so quiet, but often as business owners, if when things get quiet, a lot of fear and panic sets in because we're
Oh
like,
yeah.
holy shit, I'm not going to have any business, how am I going to make any money? So how
Yeah.
did you feel that, and how did you manage that?
For sure. I mean, like I mean, when I left, I also had a lot going on in my personal life. Like we were sort of
Mm-hmm.
selling a house and moving, and it was December and Christmas.
Yeah.
So it was a time of like, I knew it was going to be a quiet time for my business anyway, because it was going to be
Mm-hmm.
Christmas, and then like we were moving in January, and that was going to take at least a month to like do the thing and then like
Yeah.
settle. So I knew that that was going to be 2 months where, I mean, I didn't like step away from my business, but I definitely stepped back from being like push, 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 push. Um, and then, yeah, I suppose I definitely bumped into that fear. I still bump into that fear sometimes of like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I should just get back on and remind people that I exist and like,
Yeah.
um, and that's kind of like it feels like sort of unearthing the tendrils of urgency and like
Mm.
that like very capitalistic like learnt marketing practice of like cool, go fast, yell at people, tell everyone like drag them in like force 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 force.
Yeah.
um and of course that's going to take time to unearth because it's been a long time settling in. But yeah, I expected it to have more of an impact. I expected me not yelling at people on Instagram and me also sort of like stepping back from being like really, really active for those couple of months. I expected it to have more of an impact than it did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I certainly noticed a bit of a like a squeeze, a little breathe in financially. But like as I've settled into the new home and like had space from social media to start to envisage and build the foundations of a more sustainable, like more rooted, I suppose,
Mm-hmm.
and just like more human paced
Mm.
marketing plan. Um,
Yeah.
that's that's had way more impact with people that I'm talking to than just putting more content in their faces ever did.
Yeah. Yeah. So much of what you just said resonates with me. I was literally thinking human paste. And it was when I heard it come out of your mouth, I was like, yes, we are changing. When you leave Instagram, the pace of your marketing and your life changes because of that,
Mm,
like turning your life into content bit. I think like once you just extract from that or get out of that, um, I was able to be more present. That changed my pacing for sure. But I'm intrigued by this. Like when we talk about our marketing, it doesn't surprise me at all to hear that it was doing a launch that made you leave social media,
yeah.
because the way that we're taught and told and encouraged and should id into doing launches these days is that there should be this big buildup of like free content, free content, free content, teasing things, free content, like constant, like free giving free value. And then
Mm-hmm.
cart open for like 3 to 5 days. And then like everybody's got to flood in during that time. And you push them really hard with
Mm-hmm.
like scarcity tactics, and then you close cart. And that's like, I mean, I have definitely taken in that messaging and been told that that's the
It's
best
the
way
way
to
you
do
do
a
it,
launch. Yeah,
and
and like
it's
the
yeah,
only
it's the
successful
way you
way.
do it. Yeah.
And you watch people be super successful at this and you're like, well, maybe the reason my launches haven't been working is because I wasn't doing it that way. But I think, something I'm really working on is like a refusal to be urgent in my business,
Mm-hmm.
and launch the concept of launching. I'm really just trying to like get rid of for myself. And I'm really, even when I do an event or a date based thing, like the refresh or something, really trying to just like make the registration process slow and easy, give people lots of time to discern if it's right for them. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking a leap that that will still result in the sign up numbers and like goals that I'm hoping for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if, you are an embodiment teacher. I think that the messaging that you have to be on social media is so incredibly strong, geared toward yoga teachers, healers, like embodied
Mm-hmm.
practitioners. Like I see a lot of it just like it's like a laser pointed at like your crew and your type of
Mm-hmm.
online business.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you could if you maybe want to speak to like that community directly, or anyone, and share like, how are you marketing now? What's working for you and what isn't? If you've done experiments, you're like, well, that didn't work at all.
I think, yeah, the thing that keeps coming up for me, like as I navigate this, is
Mm-hmm.
like, I mean, not to sound too much like a yoga teacher, but like is alignment. Like, there was this real rub of like cognitive dissonance when I was talking about
Mm-hmm.
like be in your body and care for yourself and like, slow down. Like I'm literally a rest teacher.
Yeah,
And
you are. It's great.
it's, yeah, and it's like, okay, but why am I perpetuating, these cultural stories of like urgency and hurry and like scarcity in the way that I am, uh,
Mm-hmm.
asking people to come and work with me.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, and again, in true me style, I was just like, okay, cool, that's got to stop now. Like, you can like notice it and notice it and notice it. And then it's like, cool,
Yeah.
no, that's it, done.
Yeah.
Um, so, so yeah, I mean, and it feels like because I had like December and January, like really dark, um, going dark, not like emotionally dark. It's like I was just
Yeah.
like, cool, like, turn the lights off, tend to the
Yeah.
people who are already in here, but like, I'm not like, come on in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like I'm sort of still just like beginning to play with how that actually looks with my marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Amelia, you obviously know because you helped me create it, but I have a podcast which
Mm-hmm.
I am like just gearing up for season 2. Um, After
Yay.
like I was like, I'll just take like a month's break. That'll be fine. And I was like, nope, nope.
Oh yeah,
Seems
no.
like it actually nope. Definitely need
Like
about
6 months.
4 or 5 months
Yeah.
off. Yep.
It's real. That's
Cool,
real.
cool. I guess we will just go with that. Um, yeah, like so bringing that back, which I'm really excited about, and it's such a beautiful way to kind of connect with like it's an interview, largely an interview podcast, so it's an amazing way to connect with other people who are working in
Mm-hmm.
similar kind of fields. So
Mm-hmm.
from a personal level, that like really ticks the box of like a lot of the stuff that social media was doing anyway in terms of like community building.
Mm-hmm.
um and it's also just like a beautiful way to kind of go slower and to let to let the things that I want to offer and like the ways I want to serve the community that I work with kind of be there for a longer time than just like
Mm-hmm.
great, you know, a 4 paragraph caption of which I'm only going to read 1 paragraph because I'm scrolling so fast. Like,
Yeah.
there is so much content on social media that that anyone has created that actually
Mm-hmm.
we're not in a nervous system place to actually consume.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, podcast is beautiful and has been a real joy to discover that I enjoy making.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've also moved a lot of my focus onto my newsletter because I love writing,
Yeah.
and I've moved it over to Substack, which means that there is the free
Mm-hmm.
fortnightly newsletter, but also there's the opportunity if somebody wants to work with me, like a little deeper on a
Mm-hmm.
really accessible, like it's £5 a month kind
Mm-hmm.
of payment.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that then we have like a live practice with the community there, and they get
Mm-hmm.
like a monthly like roundup of all of the links of stuff that I've loved and like playlists and music and just like it's just
You make really good playlists and collect really
I
good
love
links. I
making
have saved many
playlists.
of your playlists in my Spotify, so I'm just gonna
it
plug those.
truly it truly is one of my love languages. I love making playlists. So yeah, just like these are the two things that I'm doing at the moment that I'm really loving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like playing with it, uh,
Yeah.
in true this podcast form. I am like got my little like database and I'm like putting all my little experiments in. I'm like, oh, that's fun. Okay, cool. We'll try that next quarter. Like it's just so much more spacious and playful. And
Yeah.
there's that spaciousness again as well, like to just like, okay, well, what would happen if we played with this? Like instead of like, okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is write 15,000 captions and like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, cultivate a, curate a perfect feed and then it will
Yeah.
work. And just, it's so much more fun.
Yes. Oh, I love to hear that. I'm so glad you're using the database. I love the
I love the
experiments.
database.
It's so much it's just fun. The whole point is for it to be fun. And I love that you're playing. Like fun, play is fun. And that's
Mm,
really the dream. And I just also um, wanted to share for people tuning in, like something you had done in the past that actually got me to become a one-on-one client was I don't think you're doing this right now, but you've done a couple little like free series of mini practices where you'll teach a class for like 3 weeks or like
mhm.
really, they felt really light, like beautiful experiments. I've seen you do at least two of them. Maybe you've done more. And as somebody who used to be more in your like parasocial ecosystem, I was like, oh, I love what Ellie's doing. I loved your content, your newsletter. And I was like, oh, I can tiptoe in here. And then I became a one-on-one client for a season because I was so in a moment when I really needed that support and embodiment practice and mentorship. I was like, this is the person who's been sharing in a way that feels aligned, that feels
Mhm.
at the pace I want to work, that invites in rest. And I think,
Yeah.
um, that was before you were off social media, but I can only imagine like how you will continue those experiments. And for people listening, it's like, it doesn't have to be a barrage of free content to get people to take a step into your ecosystem. It can be a very simple, honest invitation. And I feel like I've seen you do that just so well. All of your marketing communication, email newsletters I've seen since you left Instagram are very like gentle and very like, here's who I am. Does this speak to you? Come closer. I feel so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it does. And like, I'm glad that it feels good as someone who's on the receiving end because it feels
Mm-hmm.
really good as someone who's on the sort of giving end of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really have a very kind of physical memory of, that sense of like, you know, it's quite ugly wording, but like, feeling like I had to manipulate people into wanting to work with me, or like, feeling like I
Mm-hmm.
had to sort of shape myself into the shape that they needed to, like had to kind of
Yeah.
like put on the right mask so that they would be like the right person. It's just like, actually, what if you just made it way more simple and
Mm-hmm.
just spoke to someone like you're a human being speaking to another person?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's a much more pleasant experience on both
Yes.
sides, I imagine.
Yes. I completely agree. So, Elle, how can people start getting your newsletter, your Substack for themselves, and tell us where we can find you on the internet now that you're off social
Yeah.
media? And if you have any offerings or practices you want to share, that's welcome too.
Yes, amazing. Well, as you heard, I have a podcast which is coming back in a couple of weeks called Wayward Bodies. Well, I mean, when I say weeks, I have no idea when this is coming out, but
It might be
let's
out
say
this will,
weeks.
yeah,
Sure.
soon.
So called Wayward Bodies, which in which I talk to a bunch of really interesting people about embodiment and creativity and how we live in our bodies in the world. Um, so that's, there's a whole season that you can go back and kind of dive into already,
Mhm.
and there will be more coming. And then, yeah, my Substack is another practice. Actually, I'm lying. That's my name. That's my social media and my website. But yeah, no, my Substack is in practice,
Yes.
which it's probably easier that you access it through my website. Another practice because obviously I've just not memorized the
It's great. That's
the
perfect.
details. But yeah, but in that it's a fortnightly free newsletter, which is like a little love letter and different practices and different observations about living in a body, and
Hmm.
how to kind of put these concepts into practice.
Hmm.
And then there's also the opportunity to kind of dive a little deeper, and become a paid subscriber, which brings, yeah, like a monthly live practice and an archive of all of the other live practices we've done. And yeah, my monthly roundup of links and music and all sorts of other good stuff. Yeah, and then if you're on that list, that's how you'll find out about the kind of little offering magic that is bubbling away at the moment now that spring has
Mhm.
sprung and I'm like emerging
Yes.
out of the
Yes.
darkness. So yeah, I think there's definitely going to be a sort of digital retreat, maybe like 8 days of rest,
Mm.
which will be coming kind of late spring, I think. Just as a, I think we often think of summer as a kind of like ramping up time, but also like, can you create space? Can you create
Mm-hmm.
spaciousness and rest within that kind of like flurry
Mm-hmm.
of energy? Yeah, and then
Yeah.
there's always the possibility to work with me one to one. So many opportunities.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So, listeners, all of those links will be in the show notes, or if you're watching on YouTube, they'll be down below. If you love this conversation, I think you will really love the last episode about how to plan a summer sabbatical, how to invite in some rest with your summer. I'm like a weirdo who does not get amped up in the summer. I like my energy totally depletes and I have nothing to give when it gets hot. So, no matter how you feel about summer, it sounds like Elle and myself will both have opportunities for you to join us to get a little retreat and refreshment as we head into this hot season.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Elle, for being here. Thank
Thank you for
you.
having me.
It was a joy. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. There are just a few more episodes left of season 1 of Off the Grid. So I hope you will stick with us. As always, you can leave voice messages at speakpipe.com/off the grid, which is also in the show notes. If you want to reach out, if you have thoughts, big feelings, or questions to share, I welcome your voice. And I think that's it for today. So for now, Ellie and I are going to sign off. And until next time, we will see you off the grid, my friends. Bye for now.